I'd been searching Facebook Marketplace for weeks, trying to find a decent laptop. My old one died, and I couldn't afford anything new. I found a listing of a barely used MacBook Pro at $400. The photos looked legit, with the protective film on the screen, original box, and all the accessories. The seller's name was Kevin. His profile looked normal enough. He had maybe 50 friends and a few photos of him at what looked like baseball games. His messages were polite and detailed. He said he'd gotten the laptop as a gift, but already had one for work. He sent me a video of the sealed box with that day's newspaper next to it to prove it was real. I was sold. We arranged to meet that Saturday around 7. His location on the listing said he was in the area, but when I asked where to meet, he said he'd actually driven up to visit family about 45 minutes north and asked if I could meet him there instead. I wasn't thrilled about the drive, but $400 for that laptop was too good to pass up. I asked my roommate Riley if she wanted to come along and promised I'd buy her dinner on the way back. She agreed. Kevin suggested meeting at the town's public park. We left around 6:30, which gave us plenty of time to get there. Riley and I talked about how we'd spend the rest of the night, probably hitting up some bars and making a whole evening of it. The drive took us through increasingly rural areas with lots of farmland, scattered houses, and dense patches of trees. By the time we got close, it was almost dark. The park sat at the end of a quiet road. It was empty, except for a few streetlights flickering through the trees. The playground was dark. Swings were creaking in the wind. We drove around it twice, looking for Kevin's silver Honda, but couldn't find him. I called him. He picked up on the first ring and said his car wouldn't start. Asked if we could help him jump it. He had cables. He was only about 10 minutes away and sent me the location. I pulled it up on my phone. It was just a pin dropped on what looked like an empty road surrounded by woods. Riley immediately said no, that this was sketchy as hell and we should just go home. But I'd driven 45 minutes already and didn't want to waste the trip. I told Riley we'd just drive by and see if he was actually there. She reluctantly agreed. The road was narrow and unlit with trees on both sides. As we got closer to the pin, I saw headlights ahead. A car was parked on the shoulder with its hazards on. I slowed down. It was silver. Could have been a Honda, but I couldn't see anyone inside. No one was standing outside either. The interior looked completely empty. Riley told me to keep driving. I was already accelerating past it when my phone started ringing. It was Kevin. I didn't answer, but he wouldn't stop calling. Then the text started. Saw you drive past. Why didn't you stop? Turn around. I'm right here. Need your help, girl. I ignored all of it. Riley was already looking up places to eat nearby and found a dinner about 15 minutes away. She joked about the whole thing. The place was small and quiet, with just us and an older couple in a corner booth. We sat near the window and ordered coffee. The waitress was bringing it over when a guy in a dark hoodie walked in. He sat at the counter with his hood still up and ordered coffee without looking at anyone. But every minute or so, he'd glance over at our table. I leaned across the table and whispered to Riley that the guy might be Kevin. Riley didn't turn around, just asked if I was serious. When the waitress brought the guy his coffee, he said thank you loud enough for the whole diner to hear. It was Kevin's voice from the phone call. I told Riley we needed to leave. I asked the waitress for the check. Said we just needed the coffee to go. She asked if everything was okay. I paid fast. We picked up our coffee and headed for the door. Riley said the guy was getting up. I didn't look back, just got to my car and started it. Through the diner window, I saw him moving toward the door. I pulled out of the parking lot faster than I should have. There was a silver Honda parked next to the exit. We got back on the highway. I was doing maybe 80. About 20 minutes into the drive, my low tire pressure light came on. The PSI dropped fast. I had to pull over before I destroyed the rim. My tire was slashed along the sidewall. He must have done it while we were in the diner. Changing it took almost 20 minutes. Cars kept flying past, and it made the whole thing more stressful. Every set of headlights in the rear view made my heart race. We made it home around 11. I still bought Riley dinner like I'd promised, though neither of us had much appetite anymore. She asked what I thought would have happened if we'd stopped to help jump Kevin's car. I didn't have an answer. Didn't want to think about it. We reported the incident to the police the next day. They said they'd look into it, but weren't optimistic. The profile was probably fake, and the phone number led them to nowhere. They were right. The profile was deleted by that evening. I didn't check the number. Riley and I never brought it up, but every time I see a listing that seems too good to be true, I think about that dark road, that empty silver Honda, and the guy in the hoodie watching us from the counter. How close we came to stopping, how different that night could have ended if we'd just been a little bit more trusting. I bought my laptop from Best Buy 2 weeks later at full price. Honestly, I don't care. Can't risk my life for a cheap deal, right? I was home alone for 2 weeks while my parents vacationed in Europe that summer. My younger brother had gone with them, but I'd stayed behind because of my job at the hospital. The timing seemed perfect to finally sell my dad's vintage comic book collection that had been gathering dust in the basement. He'd been talking about selling it for years, but never got around to it. I figured if I listed it while they were gone, made the sale, and surprised them with the cash when they got back, they'd be thrilled. The collection was worth at least $800 based on what I'd researched online. I listed it on Facebook Marketplace for $650, hoping for a quick sale. Within hours, an interested shopper named Sabrina Lee reached out to me. She said she loved collecting vintages and couldn't wait to add the comics to her collection. She offered me $600 cash. I should have been more suspicious, but I was excited about the sale. I told her to come by around 7. Sabrina didn't show up. When I asked her, she cited work reasons and rescheduled the pickup to 8, then to 9. Each time, she'd apologize and say she was almost there. She insisted she was only 15 minutes away and had driven for over an hour to get to me. She really didn't want to waste the trip. Against my better judgment, I'd agreed to wait till 10:30. At 10:47, she finally messaged me saying she'd arrived. I looked out the front window and saw a beat-up sedan parked at the curb. The interior light came on, and I watched as 4 people got out, a woman and 3 men, all in their 20s. I messaged asking if she'd brought friends. She didn't answer. They walked up the driveway. I kept the screen door locked and opened the main door just a crack. The woman, presumably Sabrina, smiled and asked if I was David. I confirmed, but I said I hadn't expected her to bring other people. She made up stuff about the guys being her brothers, and the late night, and that they'd wait outside. She tried really hard to get me to open the door. I didn't. I could tell she was annoyed. Suddenly, she started pulling on the screen door handle, asking what the problem was. The 3 guys behind her moved closer. I shut the main door and locked it, wishing they'd get the hint and leave. They didn't. Instead, They started yelling at me about wasting their time, demanding I open the door. One of the guys started pounding on it, shouting obscenities while his friends laughed. I moved away from the door and watched through the dining room window as they stood on the porch for nearly 15 minutes, knocking periodically and talking among themselves. From my brother's upstairs bedroom, I could see the driveway below. One of the guys was urinating on the concrete right next to my mom's flower bed. They were making no effort to hide what they were doing. Eventually, they left, got back in the car, and drove off slowly, like they weren't in any hurry. I deleted the listing immediately and blocked the account. I didn't call 911 because I thought it was done and dusted. Around 2 a.m, I heard glass breaking downstairs. I was out of bed instantly. I grabbed my phone and hid in the closet. I could hear multiple footsteps downstairs, sounds of cabinets and drawers opening. I dialed 911 and told the dispatcher about these intruders. She told me to stay on the line, stay quiet, that officers were on the way. The footsteps came upstairs. I could hear them going through my parents' bedroom, my brother's room. One of them tried my door handle and found it locked. Someone kicked it. Once, twice. The frame splintered but held. Then they moved on and continued down the hall. The dispatcher kept asking if I was okay. I couldn't respond, just kept the phone pressed to my ear. After what felt like hours, but was probably less than 5 minutes, I heard them go back downstairs. The back door slammed. The police arrived about 8 minutes after I'd called. Found the kitchen window completely shattered with glass all over the floor. The back door had been forced open from the inside. They took my dad's laptop, my mom's jewelry box, cash from my brother's room, and some of my gaming equipment. The total value was probably over $3,000. The officer taking my report asked if I knew who might have done this. I showed him the Facebook messages and explained what had happened earlier that evening. He said I should have called them the first time, when the group showed up. Said that this was clearly a setup. They'd come to scope out the house, see who was home, and check the layout. I gave my statement to the detectives the next day, embellished a bit, and said one of the guys had threatened me through the door. I figured it would have made them take it more seriously. They did. Got a warrant for the Facebook account data and tracked down the IP address. Sabrina, the real name Tiffany Marsh, lived 2 towns over with a record for theft and drug possession. The warrant on her apartment recovered most of what had been stolen from my parents' house. She gave up the 3 guys immediately, trying to cut a deal. All 4 were charged with burglary, conspiracy, and trespassing. Most of the stolen items were returned before my parents got home. I had to tell them what had happened, obviously. They were furious, not about the break-in itself, but that I'd put their house at risk by trying to sell something without asking. My dad was actually relieved the comics were safe. They installed a security system the following week. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. I moved out 6 months later and got my own place across town. But I still think about it sometimes. About how my stupidity could have cost me more than a burglary. I don't use Facebook Marketplace anymore. When I moved into my first apartment, I needed to get rid of a lot of stuff. My dad was tired of storing my old furniture in his garage, so I listed everything on Facebook Marketplace. Old desk, video games, a leather couch, and this 1970s Marantz record player I'd inherited from my uncle. The record player was the prize item. I listed it for $450. It was worth more, but I needed it gone quickly. For the first week, I got the usual responses. People would ask if it was still available and then disappear. Then, someone named Marcus reached out. His profile picture showed a guy in his early 30s wearing sunglasses at the beach. The account was pretty sparse with the privacy settings locked down, but we had 4 mutual friends from high school, and his last name matched someone I vaguely remember from high school, so I figured it was legit. Marcus said he was interested and asked if he could pick it up. He didn't haggle on price or ask questions about the condition, which should have been a red flag, but I was just excited to make the sale. I told him I was free most evenings after 6. He said he worked till late, but could swing by around midnight. I agreed. I tried being friendly and asked if he'd gone to Lincoln High. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared a few times before he finally responded with a vague, "Yeah." I said I thought I'd recognized his name. He left me on scene for hours. When he did respond, he just asked for my address. I sent it, and again, he left me on scene. The rest of the day went by without anything. Around 11:30, I texted to ask if he was still coming. His response came at 11:47, saying he was outside. I looked out my second-floor window and saw a black SUV parked across the street with the engine running in tinted windows. I called the number. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I texted back saying I'd buzz him in so he could come up and check it out. He insisted I bring it down to the lobby, said his friend was with him and that they could carry it to the car after looking at it. It sounded reasonable enough, but something about the whole thing felt suspicious. I told him it was pretty heavy to get down the stairs by myself, and he said just get it to the lobby and they'd come in to help from there. The way he was texting didn't match the profile at all. The Marcus I remembered was this preppy lacrosse player who'd used proper punctuation. My gut was telling me something was wrong. I tried calling again, and it went straight to voicemail. So, I texted Kayla, the girl I'd stayed friends with from high school, asking if she knew Marcus well and if this was actually his number. She responded pretty quickly, saying that's not Marcus. Marcus had moved to Seattle years ago and didn't have Facebook anymore. My stomach dropped. I looked out the window again, and the SUV was still there with the engine running. I turned off my living room lights and moved to the side window that faced the parking lot. That's when I spotted a guy in a dark hoodie standing between 2 cars, mostly hidden in the shadows. He was looking up at my building, and when a car drove past, the headlights lit up his face for a second. He was staring directly at my window. My phone buzzed with another text. "You coming down or what?" I didn't respond, just locked my door, made sure the chain was on, and stayed away from the windows. Another text came through saying that he could see my lights go off and asking what my problem was. Then another one said his buddy drove all the way out there and I was wasting their time. So, there were definitely at least 2 of them. I looked through the blinds again, and the guy in the parking lot was gone, but the SUV was still sitting there. My phone started ringing. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately, and I ignored it again. Then a text came through saying this was messed up and they knew where I lived now. I called the police non-emergency line and explained the situation. The dispatcher said she'd send someone over, but it might take a while. She told me to stay inside and not engage with them. I kept watching from the window, and about 10 minutes later, the guy in the hoodie got in the SUV. It sat there for another 5 minutes before finally driving off. The police showed up about 40 minutes later and took my statement. They said they'd patrol the area, but couldn't really do much since no actual crime had been committed. Suggested I report the Facebook account and block the number. I did both right away. The profile was deleted by the next morning. 2 days later, I got a text from a different number saying, "Nice try calling the cops," and that they can't watch me forever. Said I should have just opened the door when they asked nicely. I reported that number too, changed mine, and took down all my marketplace listings. The thing that really messes with me happened about a week later. I ran into Kayla at a coffee shop, and she mentioned that the fake Marcus profile had been messaging a bunch of people we went to school with, and mostly all of them were trying to sell expensive stuff. Apparently, one guy had actually opened his door when someone came to buy furniture from him. 2 guys rushed in as soon as he opened it, beat him up pretty badly, and took his wallet, phone, and keys. When he filed the police report, the detectives found similar cases across 3 different countries. I still think about what would have happened if I'd actually brought the record player down to the lobby like they wanted. I moved about 6 months later to a building with better security in a different part of town. Haven't used Marketplace since. Can't bring myself to do it.